Socrates tells us that without education, we are like men in a cave watching shadow puppets and supposing them to be real things. He says education is essentially the arduous climb up out of the cave, the painful adjustment to the sunlight so that we can behold real objects. Now, too often we see this merely as a parable about the climb up, about how the acquisition of wisdom is painful and difficult. But even more importantly, it's about the climb down, about the pain and difficulty of using your education in the real world. Socrates says, imagine that they descend into their old habitations. In that underground dwelling, they will not see as well as their fellows, and will not be able to compete in the measurement of the shadows on the wall. There will be many jokes about the man who went to see the sun and lost his eyes, for his eyes are apt to blink at the images or shadows of images which they behold. He cannot enter at all into the ideas of those who have never understood the relation of the shadow to the substance. Because if you go straight from a classical institution into the workforce, as I did, you are in for a rude surprise. You're going to be expecting that conversations will be driven by logic and reason and charity. In fact, you may know of no other way to have a conversation, and you're going to find that instead conversations are driven by status and charisma and office politics. And this is what people mean when they ask, how will you use philosophy and literature and metaphysics in the real world? The real world they are talking about is the cave, the world of money, expediency, fear, tribalism, reaction. And here's the crux. Status, charisma, office politics, these are not just games you didn't learn. These are games you don't want to learn. How worthless to them then will seem the honors and glories of the cave. But if you do not learn the prisoner's language, you will not succeed in your career. And of course, you shouldn't desire success, money, fame. You should desire responsibility, wisdom, and virtue. But if you are not being promoted, if you are not advancing in your career, you aren't in a position of responsibility. And whatever virtue and wisdom you have is going to do your coworkers little good. What we're talking about is the art of worldly wisdom, the art of living in a dark world without stumbling in the dark. And in the 17th century, a priest named Balthazar Gracian wrote a book about it. You should be reading this instead of Machiavelli. He says, all victories breed hate. Superiority is always detested. There be some that will grant you precedence in good luck or good temper, but not in good sense, least of all a prince. They will allow a man to help them, but not to surpass them, and will have any advice tendered them to appear like a recollection of something they have forgotten, rather than as a guide to something they cannot find. And see, you graduated thinking that good sense would get rewarded in the workplace, but it turns out your boss might see it as a threat. Huh? No, you wouldn't walk around the office saying threatening things on purpose. But you have a completely different point of reference for what things are threatening. And that is on you to solve. I used to think that thinking about your career was nonsense. My education will just let me do good work and the results will speak for themselves, and then I'll get a position of responsibility where I can really put my talents to use. Well, results don't speak for themselves when people have completely different points of reference for what a good result is. You could design a beautiful, efficient, logical system that would streamline everything at the office and save time. And then you tell everybody about it because you believe that logic and efficiency and beauty are all ends in themselves. And then it turns out just doing this work has offended somebody. And then you didn't describe it in business buzzwords anyway because that seemed like flimsy language to you. Classical students fail in their career the moment they fail to realize they are working in the cave. And even if you're working at the finest classical institution in the world, your coworkers, and you are occasionally going to slip back into prisonerhood. If you don't bother to learn the prisoner's language, you are going to look as crazy as Archimedes running down the street naked. His discovery was more important to him than getting dressed. Maybe actually more important than getting dressed. I'm not going to disagree with Archimedes. But to the random bystanders, he doesn't look like a scientific discoverer. He looks like a madman. And I worry that this word picture is going to sound classist and arrogant. It's not that your coworkers are going to be hostile to logic and reason. It's that logic and reason are hard to see in the dark, and bravado and arrogance and office politicking are easy to see. Bravado and office politics are the shadow of leadership. Your coworkers may care more about competence than you do. They're just looking at it in 2D. Now, Socrates has another word picture for us. He says there are sailors and there are navigators, and it's important for us to remember he's saying this at a time of relatively short range shipping. The sailor's awareness is down here. They know the currents. They know the patterns of the waves. They can tell the depth. They know how to not run aground. This is how you sail a ship. The navigator is looking at the stars to see how far away we are from land. Think about how against common sense that is. He's looking up to discern what is down. He's using mysterious instruments and invisible laws, and this resembles magic. Remember, it was the Magi who knew that Christ's star had appeared in the sky. And if the Magi were not good at politics, they might have been laughed at. We know from other stories they were very good at politics. To the sailors, the navigator just looks like a madman. His awareness isn't just in the wrong place, it's in the wrong direction. And this is why communication is the essential tool for the classically educated man. I'm going to say that again. Communication is the quintessential skill for classically educated men. If you do not know how to communicate with those who still live in the cave, not only will you be perceived as arrogant, not only will you continually have the torment of seeing your workplace crash into hazards you saw coming, but you will not be fulfilling your purpose. Virtue means effect. When Frodo and Sam fall asleep in a thorn bush in Mordor, Tolkien says that their sleep was not without virtue. They were rested. Now you'll see that every time the V word appears in Lord of the Rings, but by that definition, it's not enough for your virtue to lie dormant. It actually has to be doing something in order to have it virtue. The virtue of virtue is that it does things. And this is what the torch is about, learning others' language so that you can be helming the important conversations in your life instead of letting emotion carry them away from you. The Torch is also a year-long coaching program that equips young, classically educated men with the tools to be taken seriously in the cave. The link is in the description. So subscribe for more tools and take care of yourselves.